This is a video I have made to test 3 different currency farming strategies at the same time in low tier maps. Hi, it's Lerald, and I'm going to be talking about Einhar, Alva, and Essences in white maps. But before I do, be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it. Alright, let's just get right into it. I wanted to test out these 3 things here while we're in the first few days of the league. I wanted to see how good Einhar farm is at low levels and low investment. I wanted to do the same thing with Alva and check out her new Cursed Treasure notable passive. And finally, I wanted to see exactly how good or bad low-level essences are now that Crystal Resonance and Amplified Energies were redesigned. So the methodology was to do 33 maps. Really, my plan was to do 3 hours. I thought each map would take about 6 minutes, and then they actually wound up being a little bit faster than I expected, 5.5 minutes or so per map, so 33 maps. All good. I have built a little spreadsheet here just to kind of show off the costs and the profit. And here we are. I assumed that the maps I did basically in the range of anywhere from like tier 1 to tier 4. I pretty much tried to do just tier 2 Dunes maps since Dunes is a tier 2, but I didn't have 30 tier 2 Dunes maps at the time, so I kind of did a mix of a bunch of different maps, and that definitely made things a little slower than it could have been if I had a big stockpile, but you know, you probably won't have a big stockpile of a tier 2 map. At least not in the first couple days of the league. So as for scarabs, I used 2 scarabs for Einhar. Einhar's Scarab of the Herd, I have some of those here. Bestiary Scarab of the Herd, they make it so that the area contains 5 additional red beasts if it has Einhar, and you can use 2 of them at once, so that's 10 extra red beasts in every single map. I also used Essence Scarabs, which just add, here they are, they add 2 extra essences. Pretty basic. The Beast Scarabs, the Herd Scarabs, are very cheap. They're 2 chaos each in bulk, so I bought like 50 of them or 60 of them or so. I had a few laying around as well. And so I used 66 of them for 132 chaos total. I'm assuming that each map is worth 1 chaos, even though I think that's probably a pretty gross overestimation. We'll just count that as 1 chaos each, just to kind of put a floor on it. And then the Essence Scarabs are actually a little bit more expensive. They're 3 chaos each for 99 scarabs in total. And putting Essence on the map device is also 3 chaos per map. So the combined total cost for Essence is, 99 times 2, 198 chaos for the 33 maps. So that did really add up a lot of the cost. I mean, literally, it's more than half the cost. And I used Wealthy Exile. I just used Wealthy Exile and typed in like, what did I type in? Essence of to get the sum total of all of the essences. And this is just in the junk tab. All of the essences in there were listed as right. At the time I was looking, about 2 divines exactly. So 280 chaos. Divine, at least at the time I was initially going through this, is 140 chaos. For currency value, just to kind of get that number out of there, I came up with 756 chaos orbs. I just literally typed in like orb and added that up, and then I was like, well, there've got to be other currency items that aren't just orbs, and so I just kind of went through and looked. Like I had like 3 chaos worth of gem cutters prisms and 2 chaos worth of glass blowers baubles and a couple chaos worth of lesser eldritch ichor and embers. So I added all of that up, and then I checked all the scarabs, and scarabs were a surprisingly good moneymaker out of this. It was over 2.5 divines worth of scarabs in this 33 map session, which I feel like that's pretty good. And then I checked the amount of Venomable Plagued Arachnids and Crikid Chimerals I got from Einhar, and it was 7 Venomable Plagued Arachnids and 3 Crikid Chimerals. Now, just to kind of head off the question of why not use this scarab here, Bestiary Scarab of Duplicating, so that you create a copy of all beasts captured in the area, so it would be, 14 Venomable Plagued Arachnids and 6 Chimerals. These are 20 chaos apiece, so that would have increased the cost of doing the Einhar stuff from, if I'd used that instead of the Essence Scarab, that would have pushed us from the 132 chaos we spent on bestiary stuff to, I guess, what's 33 times 20? 660? Yeah, I mean, that would massively increase the cost. It would have put the cost of doing the bestiary stuff around 800, and I don't even think we made enough to, yeah, okay, so as we see here, 245 chaos worth of Venomable Plagued Arachnids, assuming that they are only 35 chaos each, which I think is a little low, and 240 chaos worth of Crikid Chimerals, assuming they're 80 chaos each, which again, I think is a little on the lower end. but that's slightly under 500, so that would certainly be less than we would have spent on the duplication scarabs. And the reason for those duplication scarabs being so expensive is this right here. I am not buying one of these. The Black Morrigan is something you can force into your Einhar maps, and so if you're able to make a duplicate of the Black Morrigan sells for a lot. We'll look here. Oh, I might have to go into the Beasts tab. That's fine, but we'll show that off here. The Black Morrigan is going for about 80 chaos each. So if you're able to spend 100 chaos to force the Black Morrigan into your map, and then 13 chaos, which this number is actually a little low. I think it's really more like 20 chaos if you're buying even just like 2 of them at a time. But if you're able to spend 120 chaos and force 2 Black Morrigans into your maps, then you're able to do that at a profit, but that is expensive. There's a significant startup cost required there. So, you know, I really wanted this to just be about a very, very low cost farming strategy, and I think it has been successful. Now, as for the Alva stuff, the only cost for doing anything related to Alva was just the maps themselves, and as you can see, I was checking or tracking the amount of Doriani's Institute temples I made and the amount of Locus of Corruption temples I made. I made 0. I made 4 that had both of them in it, and then I did not actually make, out of 33 maps, you would be able to get 11 temples, but I did the trick where if you have upgraded a corruption chamber or a gem cutter's workshop, you've made one of those rooms and it doesn't go up to level 3, the incursions remaining in the map will not be able to retarget that room. So you want to not talk to Alva again and not run any other incursions in that map. And so I did do that trick a couple of times in the hopes of getting more shots at the corruption chamber and gem cutter's workshop. It worked one time and I think it failed like the other 2. So I did miss out on 1 temple worth of chronicles, but the thing is that all of these temples that don't have those rooms, they're worthless. They're not worth anything at all. So it is worth it to not bother, I think, in that situation. All right, so I've kind of looked at this here, as we can see, just to kind of hit the big notes here. This is only making about 4 divines per hour. I think a lot of the cost really comes from the essences. Well, I mean, over half of the cost comes from the essences, and only about 15% of the profit comes from the essences. So I really do think, you know, it kind of came in with 3 hypotheses that I wanted to test. 1, low-level essences are not good. And you know what? They're actually better than I thought they were. They were technically profitable, even though they're not great. 2, I thought that Einhar would be amazing, and he's okay. And I thought that Alva would be okay, and actually she's pretty great. She made a lot of, like, not a ton of currency, but for very low investment, I think that the temples that I made were pretty good. I didn't really have great luck with them, to be honest, but she also threw a ton of scarabs and currency at me. As we can see, over 1,000 chaos worth of raw currency and scarabs, and most of that came from the Alva temples, and I guess some of the red beasts. So in terms of like selling this stuff, I had made a couple of temples beforehand that I had shoved into one of these tabs, and just in the making of this video, like setting up to actually record this, I sold all of them. So they do fly off the shelves. So that is a real big positive of running Alva. In addition to, I will just show off the Atlas passive so it's easier to visualize. Just treasure hunt. It puts cursed treasures into your incursions. Now I thought that would be like 1 treasure chest in there, kind of like how there's 1 Vol Flesh Merchant if you take Vol Oligarchs, but that is not the case. I think it might be related to pack size. There were times where I would have a lot of monsters in the incursions, and there might be 5 cursed treasure chests in there. They're a little hard to see. There isn't any text over them. They are kind of slightly glowing purple. They don't drop anything inside the incursion, but then once you've, you know, if you open them, once you zone out of the incursion, they will just throw a bunch of currency around the incursion. And I never got any like raw divines out of it, but I got a lot of raw chaos. I got a lot of scarabs. I got a lot of just other bubblegum currency that's very useful. And I would imagine that if you do this as a high tier strategy where you're doing a little bit of juicing, you're getting your map like quantity and rarity and pack size up, and you are using Eldritch Altars to kind of juice all of that as well, I would imagine that these things will probably maybe throw a lot of currency at you. Now it's possible that I'm getting the absolute maximum in a tier 2 like low quality map, but I think that they would be more rewarding in high tier levels, something that I'm definitely interested in testing just to see whether it scales or not at all. Now, in terms of the time investment and all, I think that speed is really important. And I think the thing that really drags us down into the like four divines per hour for a currency strategy that can be done on an absolute like shoestring, I think is pretty decent. I think if we cut out the essences, like if I just zero out the essence costs and the essence rewards and all, I think that also would probably reduce the amount of time that we're in each map, probably by about a full minute. I do think I'm wasting about a full minute on essences. And so I think realistically, you probably could get a lot more maps done in that time. I think you probably would be pushing closer to 5 divines per hour or better if you weren't screwing around with any of the inefficient essences. Now, I think essences in tier 6 will be pretty good. That is something I'm going to test later. I just kind of really did want to test them in like tier 2s and just see if they were as bad as I feared. And no, actually, I think they were better than I feared. I thought they might be unprofitable, and they're not literally unprofitable. They're just not amazing. One thing I realized I missed and wanted to come back and just add back in here is the immutable force that I got, which has a really good roll on it. And this is worth over a divine. Well, I don't think it's actually worth 3 divines. I think it's probably worth more like 1.5. And then this replica Dragon Flang's Flight that has dominating blow gem levels on it, so it's pretty bad at a minimum. Increased reservation efficiency of skills. I didn't include these at all. I do think these are probably worth, like I said, maybe 1.5 divines for the immutable force and like 10 chaos for the replica Dragon Fang's Flight, but I kept those both out of all of the calculations across the board just because, you know, they're random good drops and I wanted to keep those out. I left the divine orb in though. You know, I'm killing 33 maps worth of red beasts. I think it's reasonable, and essences for that matter. I think it's reasonable to get 1 divine orb in there. I think that is actually pretty likely to happen across 30-40 maps of, you know, they're not juiced, but they are like rare mobs with relatively high quant rolls on it. I think that's not that unlikely. Now, one real interesting thing about this is if your character is kind of like quite weak, you can technically do this in white maps. Like Alva does not need you to have any quantity or rarity on the map for her temples to be valuable. The red beasts that are in the map are not based on quantity and rarity at all, so you can do this on maps that have no modifiers at all. I will just show off my Atlas passive tree. I don't think you need all of these points here, but I'll just show this off. I think the essence stuff in particular is like not very necessary or useful. I did take a lot of scarab nodes, as you can see. I think the scarab nodes have definitely added to the scarab drop chance, added a lot of value there, but that's really not the bulk of the value, and I am putting a lot of points. As you can see, that is a lot of points I've committed to scarabs. I think it's probably more valuable at higher levels. It was certainly useful for kind of keeping things going while I was just going through the initial process of getting the first 4 void stones, but I don't know that for a high tier, high quality, high value currency farming strategy that just farming scarabs is going to be the move. I think it's more of the new version of Alk and Go is really what scarabs represent. So if I were to look at ways to improve this strategy, I think what I would look at is, I have a couple of them around here, I think. Yes, Incursion Scarab of Champions gives you increased pack size in the incursions and a 35% chance for all monsters to be magic, and you can have 2 of these. Now, if you haven't done a tier 17 map yet, you're still going to have a 4-slot map device, so you're not going to be able to force in 4 scarabs and then also a map. But I think that running even just one of these, increasing the pack size and giving yourself a really high chance for all the monsters to be magic, will really make the incursions a lot more profitable. I was really, really kind of blown away by just how much currency the incursions threw at me. And I think that they are actually a lot better at generating raw currency than I had ever expected. And I think this could really add some value to that. I think a better way, though, really, if you're really comfortable with the Alva mechanic, is if you have, like I have some of these here. Let's take a look at this one. I have a tier 2 gem cutter's workshop and a tier 2 locus of corruption here, and unfortunately these are the wrong tier, right? They both need to be tier 3 in order for this temple to be useful. If I had broken from the strategy that I was doing and thrown this Incursion Scarab of Timelines, there's a decent shot that one of those would have come out as a rank 3, and then instead of getting like a dud map there, you know, a dud temple here, I could have gotten a 60 chaos temple or a 50 chaos temple at the very least. and that's quite a bit. The scarab here, this one, the incursion scarab of timelines, is only like 15, or I think I bought this one for 13 chaos, literally just to show it in the video rather than to like reference something I didn't have. I think I only spent 12 or 13 chaos buying this thing, and so it is a gamble, but I think it's a pretty good gamble, especially if you have both of those rooms in a temple. And maybe they are the right level, maybe they're not. This does actually randomize the room tiers. I was worried that it would change the room tiers, so I did try it on a previous set where I had those rooms like not at level 3, but then I had some other rooms at level 3, and the other one stayed level 3, and then they randomized to other things that were at level 3. I haven't been able to make this make me any money yet, but I've only tried it twice. And it does actually randomize the room tiers, which is something I had wanted to know, and I'm glad to have found out. So ultimately, I think the return on investment here is really the thing I kind of wanted to harp on. Like over 400% return on investment from Alva, Einhar, and Essences. And Essences were pretty inefficient. Like if we zero all that out again and just like look at the idea of that strategy without those, it's like 1,000% ROI. The cost of running Alva is, I mean, basically just a map and your time. And that is really good. And it is something to keep in mind, especially as a league progresses. Like if you have to go away for a while or you start a league late, Alpha's prices, the value of the Doriani's Institute and the Locus of Corruption will massively inflate. Locuses of Corruption, Loci of Corruption will be worth multiple divines down the road in this league, almost assuredly. And you can farm them in tier 1 white maps. And it really doesn't even take very long to do them. If you are just locking in on them, you can potentially get them in like 10 minutes each. That's pretty good. So even though it's not super profitable right now because a lot of people are doing it and there just isn't really that much like currency slushing around in the economy yet, I do think this is a pretty good. I mean, getting 4 divines per hour on low investment in the first week of a league is pretty decent. Another way I think you could add some currency into this strategy would be to add the Vol oligarchs. I hate these guys, the Vol flesh merchants, chasing them around. I find it to be very annoying, but I don't know, maybe it is worth it. Maybe if you had, or if I had added these guys in, maybe I might have gotten some divines. Maybe I might get just even like 5 chaos more per map would make this a pretty, like, that would be a pretty substantial increase in value from that. So not a bad idea. I think another thing is skipping red beasts that aren't the Crikit Chimerals and Fenimal Plagued Arachnids. I'm going to head to my menagerie and actually show off what these doofuses look like. All right, Fenimal Plagued Arachnid, we are going to take a look at that here. Plagued. All right, so it is this specific type of spider with like a purple back. They're a little hard to tell from some of the other arachnids. Like if we look at other arachnids, there's sort of a different, like, kind of a fatter, greener one that looks a little different from the Fenimal Plagued Arachnids, but they can be a little hard to tell, you know, pathofexile graphics from many years ago not being, like, the best in the world. The Crikit Chimerals, on the other hand, I think are pretty easy to tell apart from everything else. They're these goofy-looking frog dudes that are red and blue. And so I don't think they're that difficult to tell apart from everybody else. I ultimately killed everything because I just was like, I don't know, being dumb and kind of wasting some time. I think if I really wanted to make this strategy a lot more efficient, it probably would be zoom through all the maps, look for red beasts, look for Crikit Chimerals and Fenimal Plagued Arachnids, like with your eyes, look at them and see if they are the type that you're looking for. Kill them if they are, otherwise zoom through, try to get through each map in like 3 minutes or less. And I think this strategy could be making more like 6 to 8 divines per hour, which on just insanely low investment at the very start of a league is pretty crazy. I also think that dropping essences entirely is a good idea. This would make the Atlas passive tree point requirement a lot easier as well. You wouldn't have to take any of these essence nodes at all. That saves you over a dozen points, 4 here, 4 here, 3 here, 4 here. That's 11 points, and then I spent a couple here, so that's like 13 more points that you could save. You don't necessarily need all the scarab nodes either. I think some of these, like specifically forcing them to be like more likely to be ambush and reliquary and essence. Like some of that can be useful, but really it's not all that mandatory. So if you dropped all the scarab and essence nodes, that probably saves you, I think, around 40 points from where I'm at here. So I have a 127 point setup right now because I have finished void stones, but I think you could get this tree rolling at about 80 points or so, which is pretty good. You could also just like lock in on Alva or Einhar, just one of those two, while you're working your way through the Atlas, and you know, maybe you're only at like 50 points or something. I think that could work. One thing I almost forgot, and I just want to make sure I get in before we're done here, is Deadly Prey. Red beasts in your maps have a 50% chance to break free. This worked exactly like I feared it would. Basically, when you get a mob to 0 health, sometimes they'll just break free, and sometimes you will get them back to 0 health and they will break free again and again and again, and they get a stack of this buff that when you kill them then gives you a buff. Makes you take less damage from the beast, it makes you do more damage to the beast, and it gives you quant and rarity from the beasts. For a like juicing strategy, a high level juicing strategy, which is a thing that you don't do with beasts really, like as a specifically farming Einhar, this sounds okay. It's almost more like a node that you would take if you're doing a high level juicing strategy and then you're using red beasts to force in more rares in the previous version of the Atlas. Then you would take this passive and you wouldn't take any of the other Einhar nodes. But for doing an Einhar strategy, this is really bad. It just is really, really not good at all. It made things way slower when I was playing around with it before doing this strategy, so I dropped it. It didn't add any value at all. It made the maps take significantly longer. Like, it added several minutes onto maps that would have 16 beasts in them. I did not like this at all, so highly recommend against using this. Other than that, I really did enjoy this strategy. I think Einhar and Alva are both good. Einhar basically met expectations of being good, but Alva greatly exceeded expectations, and Essences honestly exceeded expectations too, but my expectation was that they were going to lose me money, so the fact that they basically did a little bit better than break even, they gave me like a couple chaos a map, means that they are not good, but they are not as bad as I thought, and I think that tier 6 Essences, or yellow map essences, which is probably something I'm going to be working on fairly soon, will probably be really good. All right, I think that is it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thank you for watching. Bye.